So the emerging trends that I'm seeing, I don't know if it actually has hit yet, but I see it coming. I work with kids that are 18 and 17, 16 all day long.
Mm-hmm.
In the level of, I should say, aggressive, um, domestic, I don't want to call it domestic violence, but violence
Mm-hmm.
that I see between boys and girls now, like the level of violence that they think just supposed to exist in a relationship. Like they don't know how to interact with each other. They don't know how to talk to each other. It's very abusive. It's a
Mm-hmm.
very abusive culture and community that I'm seeing develop right before my eyes that I try to address. And I just think of where are they going to be in the next 5 years? If you're 18 now, in the next 5 years, you're going to be 23.
Right.
Are you going to take these behaviors into your adult relationships? And it's in the community that I work with, the school community I work in, it's not just one or two. It's like the majority. It's a very abusive and violent type of interaction from the boys and the girls. It's back and forth.
Right.
So this thing that I see emerging, that I see coming, is scary.
What's up, Blueprint family? Thank you all for joining us today. We do have a special guest with us, Mr. A.B. Bracewell. He is a licensed therapist, 3-time author with over 18 years of experience in the mental behavioral field, and founder of Embrace Wellness Therapy. So this is going to be a great show for you all. And we want to say welcome to you.
Thanks for having me, and I appreciate it.
Yep.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yep. Did you want to add anything to that introduction?
You did a great job. I'm a simple guy. I often say I was born, I lived, and one day I'm gonna die.
No,
So in between there, I want to make a difference. But you did a great job. I've been in the field for close to 18 years now, just working with children, working with families, working with couples. I'm a dad myself, and this is my passion. Helping people build healthy relationships is my passion. So that's basically me.
Okay, well, let's go ahead and dive right on into these questions. So, what are some of the most rewarding aspects of being a couples and relationships therapist?
Yeah, there's a lot of rewarding aspects, but I think I probably have to speak about how I even started in the field to bring it up to what I found was so rewarding. I started just as what we would call a TSS, like therapeutic support staff. So it was like a bachelor's level person where I would sit in the classrooms with students and redirect them, prompt them, kids that had different diagnoses, ADHD, things of that nature. So I kind of was like a glamorized babysitter in a way. But I realized that, that wasn't working. Just, sit down, do this, do that, get positive reinforcement. It wasn't that effective. And then I started to meet the families that these children were coming from, the parents. And, it gives you a bigger spectrum or a bigger view of what happens once they leave school. Once you leave me, you go home and you're back in an environment where things are kind of chaotic. Things are unorganized. There's a lot of aggression, a lot of violence, and I get a better understanding of why little Johnny acts this way in school. So that gave me the desire to do more family therapy opposed to work with one child, because this kid is not being raised in a vacuum by himself. He's being raised by an entire family. So I went back to school and got my degree in clinical psychology with a concentration in marriage and family therapy, so I can learn how to work with the entire system. So as I've been doing that for the past few years, I think the most rewarding part is realizing that I'm not only helping the child by himself. When I'm working with couples, I'm teaching couples how to build the skills to build a healthy relationships, and they can transfer that to the kid. And then that gets transferred to the entire family. And then the family, can transfer that to the entire community. So I look at it like that. Like I'm just not helping couples build a healthy relationship, but I'm helping entire communities, and I'm helping generations of people. I'm helping people break generational curses and cycles with my work. So I think that is the most rewarding part, the most rewarding view that I have on everything, that I can really impact a major group of people, starting with just one couple.
Well said. Have you encountered any particularly unique or challenging situations in your practice?
Oh yeah, definitely, definitely. I think one of the biggest challenges that I face is actually the reason why people come to couples therapy. It might sound funny, but what I mean by that is that I often say that even when there's issues in a relationship, it starts off as an individual issue. So people bring their individual problems to relationships, and they look at it as a couple's issue, when really we need to get healed from things that we've dealt with before we even got into relationships, before we got married, those individual problems before, and then you can come together and have something healthier and have something happier and things of that nature. So another big challenge that I have is that therapy is usually the last resort. So people go through the infidelity, or they go through the poor communication, or the lack of intimacy, or the constant argument. They go through all these things and they try to work things out on their own, or they may try to speak to a family member that may not be equipped or may not have the relationships best interests at heart. So they go through all these things and they build a lot of animosity and resentment and hatred and just dislike for the relationship. And then they say, well, let's try therapy as a last ditch effort. And that's challenging, to try to get a couple to develop new patterns of interacting after they went through all these negative things, to get them to change their mind frame, to change the way they see their mate, or just the way they see the opposite sex, or whatever it might be. So I think that's the biggest challenge, is that people look for couples therapy as the last ditch effort, the last thing we're going to try before we call it quits. And a lot of times people come to me, they already ready to call it quits.
Yeah, they checked out.
Yeah, they were already checked out, and I'm not a magician.
Right.
I don't know any magic, so it's very challenging to try to help them rebuild that. But I'm here for it.
No, yeah, I mean that's real, because that's something that me and my wife had always talked about in our older shows. Is that the fact that the one of the problems that we saw was that people are bringing their past traumas, their past issues, past relationships into a marriage or a new relationship or what have you, and then that often at times it becomes a situation to where they can't. Like you said, they bring it into that relationship. That becomes a part of the relationship. So now you got two people trying to find themselves in this relationship, and that doesn't equal to marriage. Like you said, like I agree. Like you really do need to put yourself together, have yourself together, make sure that you've cleared your traumas, you faced your traumas before you actually get into a relationship, if you're very intentional about marriage.
And even I would have to say, even if you just so happen to be in a relationship and you realize like, hey, we have these problems, don't wait till the last minute. Like you said, don't let that be the last thing that you go to. Go and address it early, because the earlier you can address it, the more open you are to, okay, let me change, let me figure this out, or let me work with you. And then till, the rap sheets build up so much to where you just cannot take anymore. And that is for sure challenging.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we was talking earlier about the fear of therapy, and a lot of people are scared to face those fears, and thinking that, like we said before, that in the Black community, that it's very it's not likely that in that community that people go and seek help for mental problems or trauma. And they more so chalk it up to, or say somebody who have trauma or mental problems, that person is just crazy. And that's a misconception. But what are some common misconceptions people have about couples therapy?
Common misconceptions. I think one of the biggest misconceptions, it has to do a lot with what I said just before, is that people come to couples therapy thinking that they going to fix their mate. That we're coming here to fix my partner. When the truth is, after we start to dig into things, like, no, you have some issues that you brought to the relationship. you've been through some trauma, like you said. You have some attachment issues, or you dealt with whatever it might be, and you've brought that to the relationship, and when we put the mirror up to a person and say, okay, this is who you are, and it's not to fix this person, it's not to fix your mate. Yes, we want to help the relationship, but in order to help the relationship, we got to help the individual. That means you have to look at yourself and see the things that you can change, the things you need to change, the things that are destroying the relationship. And that's one of the misconceptions that I often have, that people come and like, fix him or fix her. There's their problem. But then when we start to dig into stuff, and you have to realize, okay, you play a part in it. It's just not him, or it's just not her. Then some people might drop out of therapy, or some people might, there's some resistance there. But I think that's what people often believe, that we're coming to therapy because that person needs fixing, but they don't look at themselves.
Yeah.
Well, do you think that has to deal with what do you think that there's the cause of that? Is the people not wanting to, like you said, put the mirror up to themselves, or is this something that people learn to do, as far as like trying to avoid saying that they have issues or problems, and the belief of wanting to fix somebody? Accountability, to me, that's like a lack of accountability. What do you say about that, as far as trying to be accountable and aware of issues that someone may have? Like, how do you bring people to that? That awareness.
Something I often like to tell people, couples that come see me, and I know you've probably heard of the saying or the phrase that relationships are like a mirror, and your mate, it just shows a reflection of who you are. And I read one time what they say, like, we often try to hide who we are. There's parts of us that we try to hide from our mate, or we try to hide from the community or people around us. But when you're with somebody for a long period of time, they see everything.
Right.
Like, you can't hide it. But what we often do when our mate shows us that reflection in a mirror, we'll either try to break the mirror, or we try to break the person, because, we don't like the reflection that we're seeing, or we try to cover it up, try to cover that mirror up. So, we act like it doesn't exist, or we might try to wipe the mirror, we try to wipe the reflection away. That means we probably try to explain my behaviors. I'm trying to rationalize or intellectualize why I do certain things. When the truth is, we need to look in the mirror, look at the reflection, and make adjustments. Like, if my mate is saying, there's certain things about your communication that hurts me, or certain things that's damaging this relationship, can I adjust that? Can I compromise? Can I make certain sacrifices? And I think a lot of people don't take that last part. They don't make the adjustment of the reflection they see, and they try to break it, they try to wipe it away, or they try to cover it up, and they think that the relationship is going to still function at a healthy level, but it won't.
Right.
So I think it's just hard to face, like, your own faults and your own, I should say, insecurities and shortcomings. It's a hard thing to do.
No, yeah, that's deep.
Yeah, to be vulnerable in a relationship. Yes. That's really important and kind of hard, because especially if you've been hurt before, you don't want, your mate to hurt you, or even like just not wanting to be alone.
Yes.
Some people have that issue where it's hard for them. They're like, oh no, I don't want to expose them to this part of me because they may leave. But I think what I've come to realize is that it's a freeing aspect of being able to have your relationship, be vulnerable, and see the parts of you that, hey, where can I improve at? It's really freeing, because ultimately you become a better person. You're no longer holding on to those things that within yourself you probably need to change anyway. So it's a win-win if you think about it, but it's hard sometimes to get to that, part.
No, I agree. Yeah, it is a hard thing even as a therapist, it's hard to do. So, like, I know there's parts of me that may damage relationships. Like, I know I can become defensive at times. I know I have a hard time accepting criticism or correction, and I know where that comes from. So at least I acknowledge it, and even when I feel that coming up in relationships, I can probably try to check it. But even for me, that people might say is emotionally intelligent and aware of all these things, it can be difficult. So I can imagine for someone that is not in this field, or someone that have been in a series of negative relationships, it's even harder to do. So this is not easy.
Right. So the next question is, how do societal views on marriage and relationships impact your work?
You know what? When I think about societal views now, I often think of social media. I often think of the gender wars that I constantly hear, men against women, and the whole high value and low value and hypergamy. And I often feel that relationships have become so transactional that people aren't trying to be transformed in relationships. It's all about what can I get, and people have become replaceable. People, it's so easy to walk away from a relationship now, because we believe we have so many options. We believe there's, someone right around the corner, and all these things that we hear from all these different voices that talk about relationships, that give advice about relationships. I think is the way it affects couples therapy is that people don't want to try. People don't want to try. They may come sometimes, but I'll give you homework. I'll give you interventions, and I'll give you different assignments to do. But after we sit down and talk for that hour, they don't really try any of those things. They just wait for the next session, and I think that's all a part of it, because people think that I can replace this man or woman if they're not catering to my needs, or if I'm not satisfied. And I think that it's heavily influenced by what we're seeing in society today, the view that we're having, how that relationships is just temporary, and find someone else, or you could just be happier by yourself.
So how has the stigma around couples therapy changed over time? Do you think it has changed over time?
I think the stigma about therapy as a whole has changed, especially in our community. So I think people are more open to it. We talk about it a lot more. I know, especially when I was younger. Like you were saying before, when you talk about therapy, people will automatically label you as crazy. I think it's not as taboo anymore. People are willing to go. The only thing about when it comes to couples therapy, I think it's misused a lot of time, at least in my experience. I know a lot of people will use couples therapy as a way to shut someone up. Yeah, they're complaining that they want a divorce or they want to leave, and in order to appease them, I'm going to go to this therapy with her. Not really having any plans to do the work that it takes, but they believe that's going to pacify her or him for a little while. Or, people might use couples therapy as, I guess, as a threat. You either go to therapy with me or it's over. Or I'm leaving, or something like that. So I think that's what I run into often, as far as the view, or how it's changing, at least in my experience. But there's also the positive part where people are more open and talk about therapy and mental health a lot more than when I was growing up. It wasn't really a conversation at all. We had the kids that was, we would separate them, but they did their thing on their side, and we was the regular people, the normal people on our side. But I think now that we're having more conversation about healing and emotional intelligence and all these things, I think people are way more open to individual therapy and couples therapy.
Yeah.
Now, are you seeing now in your couples therapy sessions, are you seeing more women requesting their husbands or their spouses to go to couples therapy, or do you see more men going to couples therapy?
Yeah.
And do you see it, like you had mentioned before, as a instead of as a bargaining chip or a preventative to get them to do what they want them to do? Or not a preventative, but more so to something as a way to coerce them, to get them to do something. Do you see more men or women bringing their partners in or do you see it more for actually trying to, with the intention of repairing the marriage, or do you see it as more so with the intention to get a divorce or separate?
In my experience, I've definitely see more women initiating couples therapy,
Okay.
and a guy scratching and screaming to be a part of it.
Uh-huh.
I'm not saying that there's not guys that have initiated, because there are some, but the majority that I've worked with, it has been the wife or the female that initiated. And but I think for men, after they're scratching and screaming to come, I think after they see that they're sitting across from another man or another black man, someone they can relate to, they've definitely become more open to it. And a lot of them say, okay, listen, I need individual therapy, I think. So we came for couples, but I think, can I see you by myself? So I think that's the positive part. Like, once they experience it and see, like, we're just having a conversation and I'm just trying to guide you down a path that's going to help your relationship or help you become a better person, you're like, this doesn't mean that I'm crazy. It doesn't mean that I have some type of diagnosis. Just things I need to tweak and improve certain things. So even though it's the woman that's initiating sessions more and the men are initially resistant, they become very open by the time we start.
Okay. But so the women that you see them as being more so trying to facilitate the growth of their marriage, the restoration of their marriage.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. They definitely, some of them. But,
Some of them. Okay.
but I would say the majority of them definitely want the help.
Okay.
You know, they don't come just to play or just come as a show or as a threat. The majority of them definitely do want the help.
Okay. That's good.
That's a great thing about the men. I see that a lot now with a lot of maybe podcasts and like just general safe spaces for men to actually come and talk about things that they may have held in for so long. And like you said, it was not normalized back then. My mother grew up with mental disorder, and I remember my aunts telling me that they just chalked it up to, oh, that's how she was, and never looked to try to address, issues. So that hit home for me, because you can't just label somebody as that is just how they are or they're crazy without actually trying to offer some help or figure out, how you can get them help. And it's okay to get that help. It's okay to want to heal. It's okay, even if it's not a mental disorder, even if it's just, something simple like some anxiety or, it's a whole bunch of reasons why, or just somebody to talk to because you've never had anybody to talk to. But just to normalize that it's okay for a man to go to therapy. It's okay for a woman to go to therapy. No, that does not mean, you got to be separated from everybody else and you're just different. No, you're human, and that's okay.
Yeah. And I think we used to spiritualize a lot of this stuff as well. And I think with the conversation opening about mental health and mental health awareness, that they realize, yes, there's a lot of spiritual solutions to some things, but there's some practical things that we need to do to deal with our emotions and our mental state as well. And they can all work together. But even growing up, and I'm not that old, but even growing up, I know a lot of things was looked at as something spiritual, and let's pray it away, or let's anoint it away. And yes, that definitely is effective. But there's other things practical things that we need to do as well.
Well, they say faith without works is dead,
exactly,
right? So you can have all that praying all you want, but unless you actually put the work behind it, it's not going to make too much of a difference, because God needs somebody to work through.
Exactly.
So the next question I wanted to touch on is, are there any emerging trends you see in relationship dynamics? And also, to a viewer had asked about submission. So how do you address the common topic in relationships on the topic of submission as well? So relationship dynamics, any of those trends in submission?
I work in a Philadelphia school district. So the emerging trends that I'm seeing, I don't know if it actually has hit yet, but I see it coming. I work with kids that are 18 and 17, 16 all day long. In the level of, I should say, aggressive domestic, I don't want to call it domestic violence, but violence that I see between boys and girls now, like the level of violence that they think just supposed to exist in a relationship. Like they don't know how to interact with each other. They don't know how to talk to each other. It's very abusive. It's a very abusive culture and community that I'm seeing develop right before my eyes that I try to address. And I just think of where are they going to be in the next 5 years? If you're 18 now, in the next 5 years, you're going to be 23.
Right.
Are you going to take these behaviors into your adult relationships? And it's in the community that I work with, the school community I work in, it's not just one or two. It's like the majority. It's a very abusive and violent type of interaction from the boys and the girls. It's back and forth.
Right.
So this thing that I see emerging, that I see coming, is scary. It's scary because growing up, I was never taught or would dare put my hands on a woman and say that's playing. We're just playing. And the girls would never accept it as playing or accept it as he just liked me. Maybe that's something you would see when you was in the second grade, but not at the age of 18, 17. So
Right.
that's something scary, and that's something that I see coming. And even in my daily practice, I hear a lot of abusive type behaviors. If it's not physical abuse, it's emotional abuse. It could be mental abuse. So that's the scary part that I'm seeing. That's what I'm see coming.
Okay.
And I try to address that with the kids that I work with today.
Okay.
To answer the second question about submission, there's one thing I like to say when it comes to this topic, and I think this was the best definition of submission I've ever heard, and I keep it close to my heart. Is the definition. Submission. Submission is not about thinking less of yourself. It's a thinking about yourself less. Submission is not about thinking less of yourself. It's about thinking of yourself less. So when I think of submission, I really think it's just me sacrificing for my mate, is me giving to my mate, is me being less selfish.
Right.
And I'm submitting to your needs. And that doesn't make me lower than you. That doesn't make me worthless. That doesn't make me beneath you. I'm just lifting you up, and I'm putting your needs ahead of mine, and hopefully it's some reciprocity in there, that you look at me and you're putting my needs before yours, and we're doing this together. So anytime I hear the word submission, it has gotten this negative connotation to it, but I think it's all about being selfless, to tell you the truth.
Yeah.
Right. No. Yeah. I wholeheartly agree.
If we could, love that definition. That definition is on point. And I really think that that's the avenue that people need to take when it comes to thinking about submission, because it's not that, your person is trying to like make you, just not do what you want to do, or just like walk all over you. They give that connotation like, oh, that's what that means, when it's not. I submit to my husband because I love him. And if I notice something makes him uncomfortable, or if he tells me something, I do it because I love him and I'm okay with that. And I know, first off, that he won't tell me something that's wrong. He won't. I know that it's reciprocated to where he loves me, and if he sees something, if he says something, it's for my best interest as well, because he has my best interest at heart, and vice versa. A lot of times he would, if I ever need, he yields to me maybe needing to not do something at a certain time, or, something of that avenue. But it is very much reciprocated, and it's not something that needs to be just taken as something to beat somebody down about. It's just, I don't know where that concept has come from, but.
Well, I think it's kind of like the old relationship days, grandparents, and, they think of submission, like people think of, marriage and submission of a man, telling his wife what to do, what to wear, where to go, what to talk, when to talk, and things of that nature, like that old school, great grandparents' time, or whatnot. And I think that's what people think of today when you say the word submission. But like me and my wife had explained, and what we talk about is the fact that you want to be of service. You want to be of service, and with the intention on getting married, that means you want to be of service to somebody, not trying to get somebody and trap them and walk all over them and say, hey, I got somebody to be a slave to me.
Right.
So that's not what submission is about at all, and I think that's the misconception and what people think. And I think that's where this question comes from that viewer, for them to touch, for us to touch on that. For them, it's not about, like I said, trapping somebody and walking all over. You got to be of love and service, and like you said, being selfless in the approach of marriage.
I think we've with relationships in general, but especially with submission, I think we've taken God and spirituality out of things so much that it's polluted the definition and the view of what submission is.
Yeah.
I think if people would understand where it comes from,
Right.
because people know where to quote it, but
Right.
they pollute it.
Right.
You've polluted what the definition means, what it was meant to be. And I think if we can add more spirituality, more godliness in things like how we understand submission or relationships in general, then we wouldn't have these type of conversations. Now I understand, people take submission or take things from the Bible and twist it, but that's up to us to know what the true definition and meaning of it. And I think that's a big part of it as well.
It's a huge part of it.
Right.
It really is. Being righteous in how you're living, because and to be married and to do it the right way, you really have to be righteous. To not want to do the things that you know are wrong, and not want to so much be self-seeking. You care about your spouse, like my husband says, being of service to your spouse. And that is huge. God has been taking out of a lot of things that people want to, but what's good, solid marriages have a huge part where God is forefront, and that is really what keeps the marriage together, and the spirituality and you being a good person and whole and right with your spouse.
Right. Yeah. Because normally those are the longer lasting relationships, and those who are equally yoked. Right.
Yeah.
And I think that, like you said, that is a big aspect that's missing in relationships. We could beat on this all day and say that people are just, getting into relationships for their own interests, for their own wants and whatever agendas that they may have, and that's the reason why they don't work. That the aspect of God and religion is missing out of today's relationships, families, overall.
And that's why the children, I think, are
suffering.
being like, you're seeing the trend of them being so aggressive. They are missing so much of love. God is love. When
Right.
you're missing that love growing up, you naturally are going to be more aggressive. You're going to have more conflict in your life, because that's what's missing. And you normalize that, and you think that this is the proper way to function, when it's really not. Having that dynamic of a family, you seeing the man and the woman come together and their love that they have for each other, how they talk to each other, how they treat each other. Not seeing that really does compromise your mind. It really, the things you believe in, you then take in so much, outside worldly things, that you think that, oh, it's okay to, beat on a person or whatever, and that shows them that I love them or whatever, or I gotta force them to do something or something like that, when that's not love at all. Love is patient, love is kind, love is gentle. That is what love is, and people just miss that part. But this is really why we do this, to have that example of people seeing and hearing from actual functioning adults of what life and the dynamics of relationships are supposed to look like. So yeah,
Great.
thank you.
Nah, that's great.
Yeah. So this next question kind of segues into that. So what are some of the biggest challenges couples face today? I know you said the thing about, the future, as far as the young people being abusive and thinking that's normalized. And today times, I guess with people and couples that you come across, what are the common biggest challenges you see that they face today?
Some of the biggest things that I see with the couples that come to me, I think I could have probably hinted at it before, is the level of trauma that they've been through before they decided to get together. It is like the type of attachment that they have. People come with a lot of abandonment issues. People have had a history of getting sexually assaulted or violated. People have been physically abused, mentally abused. Like for so young and so long, and then as they get older, they don't address those issues. They don't realize how that has affected the way they trust. They don't realize how it affects the way they communicate, how they affect the way they respond to their mates. How it affects the way they're being intimate with their mates. And that's a lot of the challenges that they bring to the relationship or to counseling. And when we start digging and really talking about stuff and going through what we call like a genogram, which is kind of like a family tree, but we discuss what were some of the issues in these relationships? What happened back there? And you start to see patterns and trends of abuse or neglect and things of that nature, and how it's affecting the relationship now. It was so normalized in their entire family that they never addressed it. But now it's smacking them right in the face in the relationship, and they don't have the I should say awareness or the vocabulary, or I guess just the vulnerability to say, I'm coming with a lot of issues, and I need you to be patient. I need your support with these things. What they often do is say, no, you're the problem, or or I do this because you did that. No, you have low patience or you are very argumentative because that's where you come from. Because your response to that person's action was it was not in proportion. So there's a reason you deal with anger, but people don't want to dig that far back to why they dealing with that type of emotion. So that's the challenges that I'm seeing. People not necessarily, I don't even want to say healing, because there's some things you probably won't totally heal from, but willing to work on it. A lot of people not acknowledging it, like you said before, or willing to make the changes so they can have better relationships.
Okay, so the marriage statistics, the divorce statistics rather, is pretty much in America is 50-50. And they say that 80% of divorce are initiated by women. And within that 80%, they're saying that 70% are women over 40 who are actually initiating divorce. So are you seeing that with those age ranges of people, that they're not willing to, they've met their end of the relationship, been married for 20 years, and you know what, this is it, or 15 years, and said, I'm pretty much done with this. So is that what you're seeing, is that they've held on to this trauma, didn't fix any of that type of stuff, and they just, pretty much want to quit? Or
I think it's a combination of things when it comes to that. And I hear those numbers, those statistics a lot, those stats a lot. And I think a lot of people don't really look behind the numbers. They're just like, oh, women initiate all the divorces.
Right.
But there's a lot of things that has, contribute to that. Like even if I think back, I think it's been trending for a long time of women initiating divorces. And I believe one of the reasons is that back in history or years ago, if a woman was in an abusive relationship or a negative relationship, unhealthy relationship, if she did not have the ability to go out and find a job that can support her and her family, she would be forced to stay in that abusive relationship. But as women elevate and get more education and open themselves up to professionally to higher levels of income, they may be less tolerant to stay within an abusive relationship because they have the means to support themselves and their kids. So I won't stay in this relationship if it's not getting better. I can leave. I can divorce. And I see those two things going hand in hand. So yeah, I do see that. Like I said, a lot of the times it is the women that's initiating therapy as well, but it's also her that's saying like, this is the last chance, and if this doesn't work, we're gonna sign those papers, we're gonna get a divorce. So and I think as far as us guys are concerned when it comes to that, I don't think we always recognize what the needs are, which leads to a lot of divorce. I have a lot of women that come to sessions because they feel like they're not getting their emotional needs met by men, and that's what's pushing them to leave the relationship. And as guys, we weren't trained, we weren't programmed and conditioned to see some of these needs or to cater to some of these needs. It's not necessarily all our fault all the time. Well, we just, that's just not how we're built. But we have to realize when it comes to women, they have certain needs, and we have to at least give the effort to try to reach those emotional needs. And in a lot of cases, I've seen those emotional needs come before financial needs.
Right.
It's become before a lot of other needs that us men think are important. They see emotional needs up here.
Right.
And if those things are not getting met, they're not happy, they're not satisfied in a relationship, and they're willing to walk away now because they can support themselves and their kids.
I mean, and that's the interesting dynamic with all of the dimensions of the situation of the woman who's able to support herself and to walk away. You also, like you said, the men, more than likely these men, it's a 50-50 coin toss, have been raised by a woman. So those emotional aspects of seeing a healthy relationship from a man and a woman together, husband and wife, mama and daddy, doesn't exist. All they see is the abuse that their mom had probably been through, all of that type of stuff. And they try to create a relationship out of that, and they didn't see the love there. So they, grow up, want to be married. And then we find this out in the marriage that, my wife, she wants some sort of emotional support. And I don't even know what that is. I've been single as a young man growing up. I didn't have to provide nobody provided me no emotional support. What is that? And then so that we fall in trouble because of that. And I agree, and it's not that, some people may say that, we're pandering to women or whatever the case may be. We're not trying to generalize and say that this is all the reason why women are, stepping away from their marriages. There's multiple reasons why, but from what your aspect is saying, this is what you're seeing. And I agree with that, because you said this background story that needs to be said about this. And that's one thing that I like about our show, is that we're providing that background so that people can see the full picture and not try to point fingers and say, and generalize and say all women or all men. This is very specific. Even though the statistics, you say, they are out there, but they're individualized per case. It's not everybody or all women over the age of 40 are divorcing because they can financially provide for themselves. It's something that led up to that, and I think so that men are probably more so reluctant to get a divorce because they know that, one, they have to probably pay alimony or child support or whatever the case may be. And I ain't going to do it. I'm going to wait till he's 18 and then, we can probably do it or whatever the case may be. And that may be the contributing factor for the age over 40. So, before people say anything and comment, about pandering or, to women in that aspect, it really goes into individual situations in case by case. You really got to dig down into those numbers. You really can't just generalize all situations and all women or all men.
Yes, I wanted to add on the emotional needs part. From what I see and what I learned in my practice, is that even though women have these emotional needs that a lot of men aren't able to recognize and meet, a lot of the times the emotional need doesn't come from a healthy place either. Because you were saying, like, having a traumatic background. Like I said, I work with kids. I work with kids that's 14 to 18, and you wouldn't believe some of the stories that some of the young ladies tell me of the things that they've been through from like age 5 on. And they come into relationships with these type of emotional needs that, that's not from a healthy place, but, a regular guy would not be equipped to meet those needs, because you need this extra attention, or you need this extra support, or you need me to be there all the time because you was abandoned or you was abused or something like that. So yes, men don't always acknowledge and recognize the emotional needs, but also, yes, from my experience, some of the emotional needs that the ladies have that come to me is not coming from a healthy place.
Right.
So they definitely need to seek that healing and address those needs, so you're not putting that type of pressure or
that challenge,
that expectation on this guy.
Yeah.
It's unreasonable for us to meet some of these needs.
Yeah, especially if it's too much to handle. Like, those real traumatic situations where it's really too much to handle, and a person can be taken aback, like, wow, can I even live up to that in a way? So I definitely understand that for sure.
Right. And I mean, and that may be the marriage statistics, people in their 30s are now getting married for the first time. That probably is a good thing now, being in the age and time that we're in. No longer people in their early 20s are getting married. They actually may be getting themselves together. I know men now more getting themselves more so financially ready. As hopefully there is a mental aspect to that as well, as far as that, trauma goes.
It's
So I mean, I
definitely
can see
more.
that actually being a good thing.
It's more. It's happening more.
Yeah.
Men are definitely turning to paying attention to their mental health a lot more these
Yeah.
days.
And getting the therapy ahead of time, especially if you have been traumatized. Do therapy before you get into a relationship. Yeah. It makes it easier to talk about too.
Yeah, definitely.
So I do want to ask this question: what situation do you think would make divorce the best solution? At what stage or what situation would divorce be the right thing to do?
I think the first thing that comes to my mind, if there's any type of abuse that might threaten your life or the life of the children, definitely I would say that might be a reason. I think any type of, and this is just my opinion, and I think any type of strong drug addiction that might also threaten the life of you or the kids. And I would also have to say I would have to go scriptural. Like the Bible says, if there's any type of infidelity. I mean, now I know that there's a lot of people that work through infidelity, and that's great. But they say it's justifiable for divorce.
Right.
Yeah,
So
biblically, yeah.
yeah. So I think for the most part, I've seen people work through some very hard times and some very hard situations that surprised me. Like, wow, I didn't think I was gonna make it. So it's hard for me to say, this is just justifiable, because I've seen so many people that like have come up from the ashes in their relationships and they still together now. So I think anything is workable, but I think if my number one thing, if it's threatening your life,
Right.
I think you have to get out of there.
Right.
Mental health too. I would think of that too, because sometimes mental abuse is just as painful as physical abuse. I think about that too. But, yeah.
Okay. So some research suggests lack of commitment is the most common reason for divorce, exceeding even infidelity. So what has been your experience is the most common reason people want to divorce?
I think lack of commitment is such a broad statement that I think anytime someone's, not anytime, but most of the time when someone divorces, I think that's a sign of lack of commitment. We weren't totally committed, that so we went our separate ways. But in my experience, what people often come to me and what I see is the issue is poor conflict regulations, conflict resolution skills. Constant argument and fussing and going over the same thing over and over again, and not being able to resolve this conflict I see that a lot. We can't figure out how to communicate in a healthy way. So we rather just not talk at all, stonewall each other, or it's just a real negative, unhealthy type of communication, which leads to a lot of separations and breakups, and of course, infidelity. I see that often as well, and kind of like what I said before, what I often see is a lack of emotional and physical support. That can really destroy a relationship as well. So I think those are the four main things that probably pop up when someone comes to me. It's something going on with the communication, or they're just constantly arguing over the same thing and they don't know how to resolve this issue, and it's become such a thorn in the relationship that they're ready to go their separate ways. There's been some cheating, and that lack of support. Those are the things that pop in my head from what I see the most often.
Okay. So it's not like money or financial issues and things like that.
I think that happens, but I think that's usually just a symptom to other things. Like if a financial issue is really because this person doesn't feel like they're supported or something. So I think my job as a therapist is to get them off of like the content of us arguing about the bills or whatever it might be, and let's talk about the process. Okay, you saying the issue is the bills, but there's something that's underlying, that's causing y'all to go your separate ways, and it's not just the bills. Is you don't trust his leadership, or you don't trust the way you don't trust her. It's something with distrust or communication. There's always some underlying more, like a better word, important issues that we need to talk about. And like the money issue, usually just like it's the surface, the things that we see right now.
Okay.
I was wondering, with lack of commitment, it made me think of just a simple scenario. If lack of commitment is like a reason why a person or a couple would be seeking divorce, how would you like work with that if like a spouse doesn't seem to even, they're checked out. They don't even seem to want to be in the relationship. They're just holding on to the kids to turn 18, like my husband mentioned before, or just like around just because they don't want to be single or whatever, or for the money or whatever. But like, how do you even navigate just somebody completely checking out of the relationship? Like,
I think what I like to do is often try to help people reframe the way they're seeing a relationship. Because usually when someone's has checked out a relationship, is because they have totally put their partner in a negative view. Like I no longer see the positives in you. I no longer see your strengths. I no longer see the things I love about you. I only see those mistakes you've made. I've only see your faults and your insecurities, the things that get on my nerves. And now I'm checked out. That connection is no longer there. So I think is always good to try to encourage them to reframe the way that they're thinking and the way they're seeing their mate, because usually it's still there. It's still there. It still exists. But like we can put up such a wall sometimes, and we can manipulate our own mind sometimes, that we'll look at our partner a certain way that will totally turn against them. So they just might need some encouragement, give them some exercises on how to rebuild that intimacy, that closeness, how to communicate. But one thing I like to do in sessions when I see someone totally checked out is something simple as stop talking to me, turn to each other and talk. And it's so hard for some people just to look at their husband, their wife, or their mate and just communicate to them eye to eye, like everything is coming towards me, because they have lost that connection. So something as simple as that, like turn to each other, act like I'm not here. Yeah, talk to them, hold their hand. That can help to start rebuilding like that connection.
Yeah. Thank you.
Now, have you observed any specific challenges faced by younger couples seeking therapy compared to older couples? Any differences?
I guess the biggest difference I think is positive. I think the biggest difference, I get more younger couples. I think I guess being that, like we said, mental health awareness and just therapy in general has been spoken about and it's more acceptable now. I think younger couples are just more open to doing it. I don't get that many older couples come in. They either probably know what they're doing, or they feel like they know what they're doing, or they're done with it. But I get more younger couples more than anything, and I think just because in this generation we're just more open to having therapy and talk about mental health or trying to work things out.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's real good. But you give us hope. That's what you're doing. You're giving us hope from the inside, so now we can see what's going on. So what advice would you give couples considering therapy but hesitant to do so due to social pressures?
Well, if it's due to social pressures, I think you just have to realize that, you're in your relationship. It's you two. It's no one else. Not to say that you can't seek advice from a trusted source, somebody that that you look at having a healthy relationship. But at the end of the day, it's between the two people. So just don't allow different, whatever it might be, social media to pollute your mind. Practice. I always say blocking negative social media is self-care. And I know for a fact that has affected a lot of people in their relationship. them scrolling and just looking at all these things and creating these false expectations in their mate or in their relationship. And before you know it, I'm holding you in contempt, or I'm being resentful towards you, and I don't even know what I did. It's because now I'm comparing our relationship to things that I'm seeing out in society instead of us just working together and try to have the best, most healthy relationship that we can have together, and not comparing it to all the stuff that we're seeing and hearing.
Gotcha. So, what are some resources would you recommend for couples looking to improve your relationships, as well for single people? I see you brought in some books. I think that's one of them. You want to talk about those, or?
Oh yeah, definitely. I think I have 3 books. I'm a 3-time author, so those books are definitely good for singles that are looking to heal from certain things. That's trying to be in some positive relationships. In that Ready for Relationship book, I have 4 principles that I believe that we need to focus on in order to be ready for a good relationship. One of them would be to try to heal from past hurt, past trauma, and not to get into a new relationship bringing the old stuff in. Try to heal from that. Try to get to know who you are as a person, because we enter into relationships not knowing who we are. Then we put expectations on other people and want them to fill these roles that they were never built to fill, or we try to fill roles in other people's lives that we're not built to fill. So you have to really know who you are as an individual, so you can know what to let in your life and what to not to let into your life. I always like to say this, that if you find it in God, then you never have to search for it in man. And I'm talking about just mankind. So like the love, the belonging, the trust, all those things, the patience, all those things we look for other people to bring into our life. If we can get those things from like God, who has the unlimited source of joy and love, then we go into relationships with less desperation. We go into relationships not looking just to take, but we give those things. And I also say that we need to develop like a mutuality mindset when I'm speaking to singles. And what that really means is just turning that me into we, that I into us. Because when you're single, you probably can live selfishly. Everything can be focused on you. But when it's time to be in a relationship, you have to open up your world and let somebody in your world, and you have to enter into theirs. And you can't be selfish anymore. And that could be a hard switch for someone that's been single for a long time. Someone's that, feel like they healed and they've done everything. Like open up your life and your world to someone else could be hard. So yeah, other than my books, I follow John Gottman. He does some great work on communication. And I study him a lot on just like the 4 horsemen's, the things that kill communication. And that's something I use a lot with couples. And I think that's a good resource for people to use if they can look him up. Because a lot of the issues that we face in relationships can be healed just through the right communication. But I think we often fall off the track because we don't know how to talk to each other.
Yeah, and also not having the right intentions either. You got to be wanting and be a willing participant as well to make things work. But AB, other than that, how can the people reach you? So do you have a social media handle or anything like that?
Yeah, you can find me on AB Bracewell. I'm on Instagram or Facebook, but I also have a website for my private practice. It's embracewellness.com. So you can find me there. I provide individual therapy, couples therapy, and family therapy.
Okay, awesome. So with that being said, Blueprint family, thank you all for joining us. Hope you enjoyed this episode, and hope it's been a valuable resource for people who are out there who are curious and looking for more information about healthy relationships and therapy.
And thank you.
Yeah, but thank you for coming.
Us.
Thank you for having me. This was great.
I
appreciate it.
So until next time, Blueprint family, we'll see you later. Peace.